Rock isn't dead. It's in flux.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Britt with Rock and Flux, and I am joined today by Jax and Steve of the band Lowlives. Guys, thank you for being on the show today.
Absolutely. We're so glad to be here. We're excited.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
So, yeah, of course. I always ask this question first, and I'm going to start with you all, too. So, give me history of how Lowlives got started. I think you've been playing music since 2018, at least, right? So just kind of giving me a background of how you became a band and kind of where you've been to get to where you are today.
Yeah, well, our band started the same way that most larger bands do, and that's on Instagram. Luke and Lee, our singer and drummer, they found each other on Instagram. Both Brits who moved down to the U.S. and had a love of 90s music. They found Steve first, and then they recorded the song Burn Forever, and the producer Bo had been working with me in another band, and they hooked up with me, and ever since then we've been playing music, recording albums. It's been amazing.
I had known Luke for about 8 years beforehand. We had both, I mean, he and I and Lee, we've all been in previous bands that did a lot of stuff. And so, you know, especially around Los Angeles, it's a smaller community of people. And so we just always looked out for each other. He'd be like, "Oh, hey, got you this audition." And I'd be like, "Oh, hey, you want this opportunity?" And so we're really looking out for each other just to try and get each other into something when we were in downtime. So funny enough, I had met Lee randomly maybe like a year before, which is, oh, that guy seems cool. And then when we turned up to first practice, I was like, "Oh, hey, I know you." He's like, "I know you." And then yeah, we all kind of clicked from then on. And so yeah, Luke and I tracked Burn Forever in I want to say November of 2017. And then we had intended to be a 3-piece, and then we were just kind of missing the meat of it. So we were like, okay, we're open to being a full band. And then when we were talking with Bo about doing our full length, he's like, "Oh, there's this guy named Jackson you guys should meet." And then I think like 2 or 3 songs into our first practice with Jax, we we're just like, "This is the guy."
Cool. And just for listeners, so Burn Forever is your first EP that you all released.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What made you want to make 90s inspired music?
Honestly, it's what Lee writes. Lee is Lee. Am I allowed to curse on here? Lee shits out 90s grunge music like no one else.
Insane. He's such a talented songwriter, and as a guitarist, I'm in awe of him. As a musician, as a vocalist, he's got the most incredible voice that I've ever heard. The first time that we ever rehearsed together, I was blown away because I had heard recording, and then hearing him live was just a whole other thing. But we've all kind of had a love for 90s music in some way or another. Us getting together and getting to make this music, I think, was kind of an outlet for us all, and to explore the thing that we never really got to do, which was make music inspired by grunge in the 90s. And we're loving it. I mean, it's having a little bit of a moment right now, which is kind of cool. But we're glad to be at least a small part of it,
Oh yeah, sorry. I just like I was a kid in the 90s, and so I was, buying things when tapes were available, and I remember the day that Kurt Cobain died, and so that is very much a part of our physical history as musicians. You're shaped by where you came from, and so that's, I think, why we're able to make that music sound authentic, because we're taking inspiration from bands that have full back lines of stacks and are very loud and intense.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like, I think that was one of the great things about that time and that style of music. And that's one of the things that, I love about rock music in general is, those elements of it. So that was my other question is like, what about that particular style of rock music do you all love, or rock music in general?
Honestly, the rawness of it, the way that the lyricism is all very personal and very relatable, and the way that the guitars and the drums and the bass, the way it's a wall of noise, and it's just a visceral reaction that I think you get to it. The intense emotions and how loud the guitars and the drums are just like beats you over the head with it, and it connects to you, I think, in a deep way because of that. I think it's a very visceral reaction. It causes you to have this moment of reflection and inner turmoil, almost. It's dark, but it's good. It's healthy.
It's the unpredictability, I think. I Rock and roll to me needs an element of um, a little bit of like shock and awe, I guess. You can't. I, I don't feel right about rehearsing what's going to happen. I don't like it that way. Like there's, you go see a performance, like it's one thing to have like choreographed moves and, at this point we're all gonna, do this syncopated thing. I've never thought that about 90s bands. We always, you know, you didn't know what was gonna happen. I like that. I don't like knowing what's gonna happen with a band. They might, you know, I mean, some bands don't even show up.
Right. Well, I mean, do you think that some of that has been changed though, just because of like social media and the fact that we have access to everybody now, and back then we didn't?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I you hear some of these legendary stories about people with just like insane drinking habits going and being, rail thin, and I don't know. You look back on that stuff and you think maybe they were just like pretending to have like insane. I mean, obviously some people had insane drug habits and alcohol use, but in practice, I don't think that it's exactly the way that it seemed. But yeah, I mean, everyone wants to have access to you all the time. And it does demystify some things. But honestly, I think for people who are insanely talented, like Lee and the other members of this band, I think that the fact that they can't or that they don't need to enhance their talent, I don't know. It's a very human thing about what rock and roll can be, because for the most part, we're not, we for sure aren't, but you know, using backing tracks and all that kind of stuff. For us, anyway, we're still using real amps, and um, we're gonna try and hang on to that as long as we
Yeah, you're
can.
just being a real rock band.
Yeah,
know?
it's funny. It's getting it to be a bit preventative, really. You know, the the cost of operating. I mean, a lot of guitar stores, they don't even sell big amps anymore. You can't get them; they're all custom ordered. So everyone's going to the digital format for their amplifiers. And I'm not knocking anyone for doing that, but um, you know, if it's all ones and zeros, there's no, the mystique kind of leaves a little bit.
Well, I think it's like the
Absolutely.
grit that you kind of get from the natural version of stuff.
Well, you haven't lived until your tube amp blows up in the middle of a set.
And what do you do when that happens? Like, how do you handle something like that?
Well, you try and have a backup head.
Yeah.
Or
You smash everything.
throw your yeah. Throw your bass down and go dive into the crowd. That's typically how I
True.
handle that. Find a backup microphone and go jump on someone's head.
Oh boy. So you guys, your debut album, which is called Freaking Out, comes out at the end of this month on May 31st. And I know this one you're releasing through Spine Farm Records. Can you tell me about the process of working? Is this is the like your first official full album release? Tell me about the recording process and about, signing with Spine Farm and how that came to be too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was coming from my perspective is a little bit different just because this is the first time I've been in a band that's signed to a label. So it was definitely recording the album was amazing. We worked with Adrian Bushby. We weren't sure because his manager reached out to us and was like, "Hey, Adrian wants to work with you guys." And we were like kind of iffy on whether it was a real email or not. We thought possibly it was like spam or something. We were about to be like,
possibly he was a Nigerian prince contacting us.
I need $20,000.
Because I mean, his roster is pretty amazing too, so I can understand why you felt like that. Yeah.
And so as soon as we realized it was real and everything was lining up, we were so excited, and we were trying to figure out the logistics of it since at the time things were still shut down with the pandemic. We went in and we lived in a house that was a studio up in England called the Chapel.
It was an actual chapel for the farm that I was on, and it was one of those things where actually they lifted COVID restrictions the day we left, but the whole time we were there, like when we got into country, we had to test ourselves, and then we had to quarantine for 2 weeks, which was the exact amount of time that we were there recording. And so every single day we'd get a phone call, "Hey, are you where you're supposed to be?" And there was always this kind of like overarching fear, because at the time the British government was going and tracking people down that had just come into the country to make sure that they were where they were supposed to be. So we spent 2 weeks in isolation at the recording studio, which was I think our very first time to England not going to a pub, which was super weird. But also, we had nothing else that we were allowed to do except just be in the studio like 24/7.
And I think you can really hear it in the album. I think you can get that feeling of us being kind of not trapped, but contained in one space, and the magic that came out of it. I think it definitely comes through in the music.
Did you all already have the songs written for the most part, or did you do any writing while you were there too?
The songs were mostly written. Yeah, there was like little things like lyrics and stuff that we worked on while we were in there. But for the most part, it was pretty set in stone. We had worked on them for a long time. It was just about getting that and putting it to paper and making it tangible.
So you've released 2 singles that are going to be on the new album so far, Loser and Liar. And for me, Loser almost has like an anthematic song, kind of like an anthem to it. Did you all intentionally write it that way?
No, I think it was more of a, when Lee brought that song to us, we were so, I remember hearing it for the first time, and it's one of those moments when whenever he brings me stuff, it's always exciting, and I'm always like, oh, this is incredible. But whenever he brought us that song, I was like, this is going to be an amazing song whenever we actually get this recorded. It was just a real moment for him. I think, I think he writing that song in particular, I think something really deep in him, he brought that out. How it came out, I think, was more of just a momentary thing. I think it was very spur of the moment, the way that it was written. I don't think he had any particular designs for it, but oh man, the way it came out, we when we were working on that song, I mean, we couldn't have been happier with how it came out on the album, because it is, I mean, at least for me, it's one of my favorite songs on the album for sure.
Yeah, it's got a hook. It's catchy.
I remember first practice, Luke said it ahead of Lee. He was just like, "Oh my God, you guys aren't gonna believe the song that Lee wrote today." And yeah, I mean, it's the literal embodiment of the '90s ethos. I mean, it's just, even from the guitar solo. I mean, it and I remember showing people the demo and just blowing their minds. I mean, it's that song, I think, is one of the pinnacle songs that we have, and it kind of just, yeah, the opening solo says it all for me.
Let me ask you this, like, because I mean, I agree with you that it definitely has that '90s feel to it. What bands do you think, other than Nirvana, obviously, because they were like so huge, but like, what other '90s bands do you think are most influential to your sound?
Oh boy, you want to take this one?
Well, yeah, sure. So definitely, I mean, I had Smashing Pumpkins on tape. Alice in Chains was one of the first CDs I ever bought. Those are, Bush. I mean, I was there for it. I was in it. And so it's like, I mean, Lee was in metal bands and I was in metal bands, and you form that voice around the people that you're around, but it's like your default voice. And I still spin as much Alice in Chains today as I always have. So they're one of those bands that it's never lost. I've never lost it. And maybe not so much any of the newer Bush stuff, but like 16 Stone is, it's like canon, and so is Smashing Pumpkins, especially for Luke and Lee. Like Smashing Pumpkins, we all were there with that band.
I consider myself an elder millennial, so like I grew up with them as well.
Foo Fighters, I think, is a really big influence on us as well. Very early Foo Fighters, those first few albums, especially for Lee and Luke, and not that I hate Foo Fighters, I love Foo Fighters. I think he has a very strong connection to them, and especially what was that particular video,
at Brixton.
Brixton, yes. We watch that all the time.
It's just like, it's super raw, and again, huge guitar amps, and that is a band performing it in peak form, like make the audience a little bit uncomfortable with how long you're holding your feedback out. That sort of, like, again, you don't know where they're gonna go. They'll hold that feedback out for a full minute, and Dave Grohl's just looking around, like having a blast and trying to decide when he's gonna, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, you don't know when it's coming, and that's sort of what I was saying, like the unpredictability of it.
Yeah. But you can also tell they're really enjoying it. Like they're doing it because they enjoy it.
100%.
So, and I think that makes a difference too. So you guys are playing like several festivals this year. So you're playing Louder Than Life, Aftershock, and Download Fest.
Okay.
How are you? Yeah. How are you preparing for all of those? Like, and how do you typically prepare? Because I mean, I feel like a festival of those sizes is a little probably different than other shows you might prep for.
It's a different animal for sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that there's, I will say this about this band. Like, we just always show up anytime we're on stage, and we bring it. and that's we've never struggled to bring it. So, but with larger festivals, and I think the real variable there is like gear and monitors, you know, and also some of those have like an 8-foot gap between the stage, so you don't get to feed as much as like a smaller club where you've got people like in your face, stage diving and crowd surfing. Like a lot of them have a barrier to catch people who are, you know, crowd surfing as they come up. So that's a little bit different. I think for me anyway, remembering to focus on the people in the back and keep my head up instead of, because when it's dark and you've got people in your face, like it's easier to feel that energy. But if you're looking at the back and then you see a lot of people into it, it's remembering the people at the back, I think,
especially for like big festivals like that. I find that, at least for me, I can do as much preparation as I can, but the real preparation, the real moment that matters is like the 5 seconds before you go out on the stage. It's like that moment whenever you go like, all right, we're doing it. Here we go. And I think that's the deciding moment whenever it's like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what's about to happen. And you go, all right, let's tackle it.
What do you think you're looking forward to most about it? And what other bands are you looking forward to seeing?
I can't wait to see Pantera. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah. There's a band that I've been a fan of for a long time, but I've never actually gotten to see them, from Australia. They're called Carnival, and they're going to be playing Download, so I'm really excited for that. I'm a big fan of Chevelle, and they're playing on one of the same days as us on, I think it's Aftershock. I'm excited for them. Yeah, so many, honestly. Whenever we saw the names on the list, we were like, what? Yeah.
They're good lineups. Yeah.
I'm stoked to see my friends play in the Arms, and we're playing the same day as them for Aftershock and Louder Than Life. And yeah, they're hype right now, and it'll be awesome to kind of get to share that with them. So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
For that.
What would you say people should expect from your live show?
Lots of hair flying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys do have a lot of long hair in your band members.
Yeah, a lot of hair, a lot of energy. We try to bring as much energy to it as we can. Like Steve said, we value unpredictability. We value the having a personal connection to every single show, making it a different experience every night. And I think that whenever you come out to a Lowlives show, I think you definitely get a one of a kind performance, as opposed to like the same performance night after night.
I think that if anything, when you come see us, like, and I mean no shade to any bands, but when you go see a lot of bigger bands these days, they have the same setup as some of the DJs and stuff. With they got like laser light shows, and the lasers are synced up through MIDI to their amps, and and that's not what we do. So we're not going to sync our set to lights. And I think if we were to ever do something like that, we would do it with a lighting guy who knew our set, so that we could play with that unpredictability. Because again, we thrive on being an analog band with real amps, and no triggers. And again, no shade for anyone that does that. That's just not our thing.
We want you to leave our show with hearing loss.
Well, I usually ask this question at the end of the show, but maybe I'll ask it now, because like there's that saying that like rock music is dead. And I mean, for me, I don't think that it is. I just think it's forever changing and evolving. But I would be curious to know both of your thoughts on that, and you know, because maybe the way people are doing things is different now, and not everyone's doing it in the same way they used to. But I don't think it's.
I don't think it's dead. I think that, I mean, look, you can't talk about rock being alive without mentioning like the corporate radio overlords. And I think that directly coincides with why people think rock is dead, because, you know, the 90s in particular had a really, really, really strong rock scene. And then as it evolved, you know, maybe somewhere around the same time as like Napster, you stopped seeing investment in new rock bands. So instead of reinvesting in new rock bands, they're like, we're just gonna keep playing, the same, like, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam. And I love all those bands, so I'm happy to listen to them. And I think that that's probably why people think that it's dead, but it's never died. I mean, there's so many strong indie scenes. It's just you're not getting the corporate investment that made those bands there. So it's just, what are how many bands do they allow to enter the airwaves? Because again, people need to, with streaming, less people listen to the radio.
You need to find it. Like, you got to cut through all the stuff. And if you don't have a way you might love music, but you'll never necessarily find it.
Right. Well, I mean, you don't have to listen to the radio now. Like, bands aren't made on TRL and radio anymore. So you're moving to a TikTok streaming, and the investment that comes to the return. I think that is probably where the disconnect is with rock music being alive, but it is very much alive. It's never died.
Not to mention, I think rock music particularly thrives when it's in an underdog position. I think it creates this vacuum of just creativity, and it's almost like whenever they have those little ecosystems in a bottle, it creates this system of music that is much more creative and unique and incredible, because we're all fighting so hard to make it happen. It's this beautiful, I think, ecosystem of bands that are just unique and have sounds that are just, you haven't heard stuff like that before. So I think especially whenever rock music isn't quite the top dog, I think is whenever we really thrive.
Well, there's also, homogenous. I think that when it started to, like, I don't know, lose some of its edge, it's when, instead of cranking the literal volume on your amp to make a huge sound, you're relying on digital, like, bass drops and sort of things.
Yeah. Some of the polished
absolutely
sound that's current it doesn't like go with the attitude that I think rock needs. And like, I've talked about it like actually a lot lately, that like I feel like the nu metal scene was like the last popular like subgenre of rock that like kind of mixed all of it perfectly, because they had the digital polish piece of it, but it still had the grit that it needed, because it wasn't so heavily, reliant on the other stuff. And I feel like that was like the last great mix.
But Woodstock 99,
Yeah. Yeah. We still talk about it. I mean, and like those bands are all still relevant. So
I agree.
I think that will come back, but I think that the some of the pop like bands that are getting popular now need to find more of the old school methods versus relying so heavily on overproduction.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So.
it's really difficult to control what goes out there now. I mean, you got to remember, like in those days, no one had a pocket-sized HD camera, so it was easier to say we're a punk band and at least live it through the art that you are giving to people. Whereas now, they want to know if you're eating avocado toast, and if you are you a punk band? Like, someone can film you anywhere, whereas it's just different time. And I think that veneer is kind of showing. I mean, look, it's yeah.
But look at Sleep Token. Like, we kind of know who they are, but not really. And they're actually a recent band that I think has some of that
Yeah,
attitude still. Like, they're very, very
Oh yeah,
talented. And they're getting some
they are.
popularity.
Yeah.
So like
they're
there
huge.
is, there's an appetite for it. I think, bands like that are going to pave the way in some ways for the
Well,
rest.
and I think that that the '90s thing is especially coming back really hard right now, and I think you know I mean, look, the other thing that happened in the '90s is you couldn't go and buy a new MacBook and have GarageBand. You had to be good.
Yeah, you were in an actual garage band.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not the app.
yeah.
I mean, but like it was a lot harder to sort yourself out. I mean, you know,
But you could in a vacuum more so than you can now because you didn't have to worry about social media. You didn't have to worry about doing posts. You didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Could literally just focus on like we're going to hone our look, our sound and all that. We're going to gain a local following and then we'll build from there. Now, they don't even, if you do sign, like they want even a little bit more than that a lot of the time. So, it's just it's an entirely different industry and to what you were saying, Jax, like ecosystem, like it's just the way everything works is
Totally different,
totally
ever
different,
changing.
good and bad too.
well,
Like
I mean, I
there's
think that there's a nice separation between artist and consumer, or in this case, listener, when you have to take them with what they want to show you instead of, I think we in this day and age, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, like we we want more from the art that we're given, and so we demand that connection. Yeah, I mean, and it's a lot easier these days to have a negative interaction with the fan. Not that we haven't had, but like hypothetically, if you had a negative interaction with a fan, they could put you on blast, and you know. So I think a lot of the artists are playing it more safe.
Yeah, well, I mean, and people have a constant, like their favorite musician. They can pretty much plug into their favorite musician's lives at any time of day. You can see what everyone's doing at any point. So it's a completely different kind of situation, and I think it also increases opportunities uh for confrontation, like Steve was saying, but it also creates a a fair amount of good.
yeah, it's good and bad,
I mean, I think it's awesome. Like the last time we played in Manchester, we had what 7 or 8 different people not connected with each other show up and show us personally their Lowlives tattoos. We were just like, what? Like, it was so awesome, and it's awesome that they feel connected to us in that way, that they want to permanently brand themselves with us, like and it's that sort of thing is amazing. I don't think it would be interesting to see how like Nirvana or Pearl Jam or like Lane Staley would have done with people doing that, to be able to be that close in the '90s. It would be some alternate universe anyway.
They probably were. They just may not have been able to have the opportunity to tell them because, the other element of that is like maybe they did, I guess, earlier on, but like as they got bigger, like, they were almost untouchable in some ways, you know? So, So we're gonna ask some random questions to you all now so that listeners can get to know you each a little bit better. So, and I think this is on topic. So, what is your favorite 90s music video?
Jax, I'll let you take that one first while I think about it.
Yeah, I'll go first. I would say Undone, Sweater Song. I love that music video. I watch it all the time. I'm a huge Weezer fan. I love Weezer. Which, controversial opinion apparently, but
I am not a huge Weezer fan, but I can appreciate why people like them.
yeah, I'll say this, not so on board with new stuff.
Okay. I hear you.
But, I still love them. What about you, Steve?
I mean, that was a popular video too.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's a cool video.
Yeah.
I think, well, this comes with a caveat. My dad, when I was growing up, would always cancel MTV every time it came onto our table. He did his best to keep me out of this lifestyle. So shout out to you, Dad. You probably forced my hand. But so as it was happening, I only had bits and pieces, but I do remember Bush's come down video, and that video I just remember I just remember thinking that video, the parts I had seen of it, was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. So yeah, I think that's one of my final answers for that. I mean, God, it's
Yeah, it's a good one.
What about 80s music video?
Ooh.
That was like the high time of music videos.
All right. I got a quick answer for this one.
Here we go.
Van Halen's Hot for Teacher.
Okay. It's a good one.
Specifically the part where they're all trying to do the choreographed dancing. Like it's so good.
That is a good one. What about you, Jax?
That's a great one. I would have to say for 80s, I would say probably Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I love that video. I love Cyndi Lauper. Another controversial opinion for someone that's in a 90s grunge band, but I'm a big fan. I think
she's got some great hits. So
absolutely.
Favorite song to play live?
Hey You is mine.
It's a good one. We don't get to play it much all that like recently, but Hate, Greed, Liars, and Thieves is one of my favorites to play live.
Maybe I'm gonna change my answer to that.
I knew it. Favorite breakfast cereal? It's random, but no, that's what we're here for. I would say my favorite breakfast cereal would probably be
Smacks.
Smacks?
That's a random one.
That is a very random one.
I haven't heard of that one in a long time.
Since the 90s?
It's bringing back some memories. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Okay. That's still around. It doesn't taste exactly the same as it used to.
It doesn't.
No,
it tasted so much better in the 90s.
It was. Because it was less synthetic. Like now, and I mean, I know like everything has more chemicals in it, but it just seems like certain things you can just tell. And that's one of them, Kids today are missing out.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. Favorite place to travel to? And that can just be in general. It doesn't have to be anything like to play music or anything.
I would say my favorite place to travel to so far, I love Scotland. I I love Scotland. I think it's beautiful. The UK in general is just a beautiful place, and we've been there so many times. I never thought I'd go to England so much in my life, but it's become such a destination for me.
Going to Loch Ness, that was amazing.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, that was fun. Germany, close second, because it's also very beautiful.
Yeah, I would toss it up between Edinburgh or Prague. Prague is just one of the world's most beautiful cities.
I've not been there, but I've heard very good things.
Oh, it's there's the Bridge of the Saints and just the castle on the hill. It's absolutely.
That's the cool thing about Europe is like the older buildings, like castles and stuff like that.
Yeah,
we just don't have. We don't have that stuff here, you know.
It's true. Yeah,
I know.
The oldest you get here is in the 1600s.
Right, but it's not the same. I mean, not
like
that
the first
we've
Starbucks.
got some great stuff, but yeah. I mean, you know, take the good with the bad, but we don't have the longevity that they have over there, you know.
Right. You do have especially on the West Coast, you've got, very, very scenic mountains and the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. I mean, from a landscape perspective, I think like our country is amazing because we literally have everything.
Yeah.
So there's, but the architecture in like cities, like it's just some of the older cities in Europe are just
breathtaking.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So guys, thank you for being on the show. Do you have anything else that you would want listeners to know? And one question I do typically ask, and I'm going to ask you so we can fade out with this. If people have never listened to Lowlives before and they ask you to suggest a song for them to listen to, what do you think you would suggest? And we're going to use that as our fade out song for the episode.
Ooh. All right. I would say if someone hadn't listened to our band before and they were wanting to get into it, I would say I Don't Like You would probably be the song I would suggest. Just because I think it really encapsulates everything that we are as a band, the heaviness, the beautiful parts,
the attitude.
The attitude. Yeah.
Hey, you got to have attitude for rock and roll. That's
right.
The most important part, right?
Exactly.
So, okay. First time I've had two people agree.
First
take.
I might have said Burn Forever, just because that song really, like when we started with that song, we all just went, oh shit, like it's like this.
So which one, guys? Which one is the winner?
I think I'll fall in line on this one. Let's do I Don't Like You.
Okay. All right. We're
go.
going to play that as we fade out. Any other things you would want listeners to know? You can find you all on all the streaming platforms.
All of them.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, under Lowlives is your handle, right?
Yes. I would say if you're listening to this and you whether you've listened to our band or not, I'd say we're just so glad that anyone's here paying attention at all. It's such a gift to be able to play music and get to make music that we love, and the fact that anyone's interested and that they want to listen to it or interested in us at all is amazing. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting this podcast, and thank you for supporting our band. And we love you.
And I'll piggyback on top of that with one last thing. I think for the medium that we're going to have CD, vinyl, and obviously streaming. I think it's really important that people understand that bands do need your support for pre-saves for streaming, album saves, album downloads. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to hit download, but it actually affects the way in which the economy around the music industry treats the bands. So everyone's like, well, why doesn't this band come here? Why doesn't unfortunately the music industry is an industry. So if you like what you hear, please consider buying a vinyl. Please consider buying a CD. Even if those are dead mediums for your household and you stream them anyway, you get to see this wonderful artwork that we have. Like, we're so hyped on the artwork, and
And you
so
get a little piece of it too. Like, there's something to be said for having a little piece of
right,
something that
it's
you
more
enjoy.
personal, and that's really like what we're trying to convey is that this is, we are using real amps. We are, you know, we are a physical band, like pedals. Like, if Jax forgets to turn on his delay pedal, there ain't no delay pedal coming on, Like, not that you've done that, Jack, but I'm just thinking, like,
No, it's happened.
It's real. It's real though. It's real. You are real musicians, and you're really playing when you play. And as listeners and music lovers, our music, a world without music would be a very sad place to live.
Absolutely.
So support the bands that you
and
love.
and that's
for sure.
honestly,
Absolutely.
like, I know it's, in the world of streaming, people forget that in the 90s you used to give one band $10 or $12 or however expensive it was. Here is $20 or for a CD.
And if it was all filler, it sucked.
And
that was
right. But also,
Yeah.
like, those bands were able to generate money to stay on the road by doing that. Unfortunately, they haven't quite nailed the streaming services to where it's not, that's like extra, where it used to be like, this is like the burger part. Now it's like, this is your condiment. So if you really want to support your favorite bands or any band, consider not just a shirt, but a vinyl, and have that piece of, rock history, because, if it were ever really going to die, that would be the way that it would die.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. Well, thank you guys. It's been great talking to you both and getting to know a little bit more about you both and about Lowlives. So thanks again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Can you see there's nothing left to say, but you call me every day? I have nothing left.